when 94 feet goes a little bit deeper inside Carolina, well, guess what? We're going to talk about it here on 94 feet of UNC.
Gordy to Black. The time, 18. Shot, Jordan! Michael Jordan!
Swicker with the defense and the rebound. That's a good effort by Swicker.
Stackout streaking in on Park. Rebound dunk is good, and he gets fouled by Park. Oh my goodness, what a dunk by Stackout.
Interesting that he brought him back so quickly, but you know what? They're down eight. It's very... You can't teach that high-rising ability. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1. Great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you could...
The glass no good. Rebound followed by Hansbrough. Good! Carolina.
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key.
Alice, the belt is over. Carolina. The Tar Heels have won the national championship.
And that is it. There is a new team in college basketball. North Carolina takes the title. Captain, any final. North Carolina is the 2009 national champion. And this year, the confetti is going to fall to North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time.
What's up, everybody? It is Thursday, October 7th. No, excuse me. I'm sorry. My mind is all over the place. It is Thursday, November 7th. You are tuned in to the 94 Feet of UNC podcast. I am your host, Lindsay Graham. I got a big special guest in the building with me today. Of course, he's no unfamiliar face to a lot of you all as far as UNC fans. But before we get into him and asking him of some questions and things like that, appreciate all the love and support from everybody. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel at 94 Feet of UNC. Hit the notification bell. Appreciate all the love and support. Follow me all on my socials, on Twitter, on Instagram at 94 Feet of UNC. We also got 94 Feet of UNC podcast merchandise, which is coming soon. But of course, like I told you all, just make sure you tap in with me for the free giveaways and the contests and things like that. I know I've said it for a while now, but just be patient, everybody. It's coming, I promise you. So my guest today, the man, the myth, the legend, he knows. I just said all of this to him before we even got started. The blueprint, he's everything. I got Mr. Sherrell Mcmillan in the building from inside Carolina. Rel, what's going on?
Nothing much. I appreciate you having me, and happy to be here and just talk for a little bit about Carolina basketball in a different capacity than I usually do.
Hey, that's what's up, man. Like, you know, listen, it's an honor to be able to speak with you and a pleasure, man. Like, it is, man. Like, you don't understand. Like, I between like you, you all, as far as inside Carolina, Tar Heel Illustrated, locked on Tar Heels with Isaac. That's probably around the big ones, I guess you could say. Like, I'm avid listener. Like, I listen to a lot of the others as well, but you all are like, to me. Oh, and Carolina Insider with Adam Lucas and Jones Angel. But I listen to you all, man. Like, you all are like the pinnacles, I guess you could say, when it comes to like UNC basketball broadcasting or podcasting. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, listen, I've talked to Adam, I've talked to Isaac, I got Rel on the show. I'm just waiting on Andrew Jones. Like, it's a lot, man. It's a lot. But like I said, man, it's an honor, man, for sure. So I'm glad you was able to stop by, chop it up with me a little bit. You know, like I tell all my guests, Rel, come on in, get comfortable. This is the Zell Dome. So come on in, get comfortable, kick your shoes off. If you want something to drink, that's cool. We ain't here for a long time, but we're here for a good time. So with that being said, like, let's get right on into it, man. Because
first, let me say thank you for listening. Because I think a lot of times people think we take it for granted that folks like listen to Inside Carolina and consume the content and subscribe and follow and all that, but we don't take it for granted. So thank you
Right.
first off, and then thank all of your listeners who you know engage with us or listen to our content too. We appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I've posted on my Instagram as far as like who, and I've asked a lot of the fans and stuff, who would they like to like see on the show as far as like players or whatever. And believe it or not, with a list of players, Sherrell Mcmillan's name was mentioned. So I said, hey, I mean, I'll reach out, I'll see what happens or whatever. And of course, we had, the little back and forth and everything. And it happened. Like you hear now. So, I'm sure the fans are gonna be very pleased with this episode because I think this is one that they might have been looking forward to for quite some time. So
You got
it
some.
is what it is. But
You
thank you
must
for
have.
being here, my brother. Thank you.
Yeah, you must have some of my relatives or something on your Instagram, and they running it up for me or something. That's what it is. That's the only
Listen,
explanation.
I may, I may, I don't know, real like nobody. They don't really give out their identities like that, so they could be. It could be some relatives. I mean, maybe I'll go back and ask them, like, yo, you related to him? I need to know. Like that, yeah. I'll go back and ask them. I'll see what's going on. Or if you find out, you just let me know for
I'll let you
sure,
know.
and then I
Yep.
can put them out. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, Rel, like, let's jump right into it, man. Like, listen, tell everybody, how did you get started being a writer slash podcaster, for like Inside Carolina? Like, how did it all come about and how did it all come to be?
I'll try to make a very long story very short, but in high school, so let me say this: all my family went to Carolina. Like, I really didn't have a choice when it came to colleges. Like, I had two uncles, two aunts, my brother, a little cousin after me, and a nephew who just graduated a year ago. So it's kind of in the family. So like I didn't really have a choice but to follow Carolina basketball because I grew up in a family of Carolina fans. And I'd
Hmm.
probably say around 1998, 97, 98, I was in high school, and I always wanted to. I was always interested in journalism. Always interested in like writing, and so I somehow linked up with the late Stuart Scott for my senior class project. Just randomly sent a note to ESPN, just shooting in the dark. Was like, hey, I'd love to interview Stuart Scott for my high school project. And one day, um, before probably like April of my senior year of high school, we're all hanging out at the house, and I get a call. And he's like, "Hey, Sherrell, Stuart Scott." Of course, I'm starstruck because this is a dude I watch on TV all the time. So between
Wow.
that
Right.
and then I found this website called uncbasketball.com, which was run by another like high school student named Ben Sherman at the time, and he was going out the country and doing interviews and like talking to players. Like his big interview was like Eddie Griffin back in the day. I don't know if people remember that name. The late Eddie Griffin, I think, played for Seton Hall, was a big UNC target back in the day, and I just got kind of hooked on
Yeah.
like recruiting and all the news that he was putting out and this whole world of AAU. Like, what is this? So it was a really cool thing to experience and find out about and reading more. So when I got to Carolina, we'll say in the early 2000s when I enrolled there and started going to school, um, I ended up in the journalism school, and from there, there were things I wanted to do at UNC that didn't allow me, or I didn't think would allow me to work for Inside Carolina. So I kind of stayed in the shadows
Hmm.
and did some stuff under like some pen names and just did some stuff without my name on it. And then probably around 2009, 2010, I was like, my dreams of like being the athletic director of Carolina or working in the administration like I'd always wanted to do probably isn't going to happen. And so I left kind of the world of newspapers and all that stuff, found a day job, and then we'd been cool for a decade at that point. It was like, hey, let's make your role more um, more robust. Let's do a little bit more. So it started off as covering just guys in state recruiting, and then probably around
Mm-hmm.
2013, it was like let's just do this. Let's do everybody. And so that's kind of how it started. I linked up with Ben probably in 2000, 2001, and we had a good relationship. Started going to AAU events, and like 2002 was the first year I really 2001 I would say is the first year I went to what was then just the Peach Jam Invitational. It wasn't what it is now, and that was Raymond
Mm-hmm.
Felton and Sean May in that class, and kind of moved forward from there to where we are now, 20 some years later, which is a crazy thing to say.
Remarkable story. Remarkable story. Like, listen, it's one of these days, I guess I may be on the other side to where somebody is asking me how I got started in this field, I guess you could say. You know what I'm saying? But everybody's stories have just been, to me, and this is just me, but everybody's stories have just been incredible as far as, when it comes to the alumni players and their recruitment process, or, people such as yourself or Adam Lucas, or, Isaac Shade, and people like that, and you guys, like, as far as how you all got started with it when it comes to being a big writer, or, now in this podcasting space for the university. Because I mean, let's be clear, the university is very tight knit, I guess you could say. So it's like, you got to be special to, like, really really get involved with for the university to even want to get involved with yourself, or, like, you know what I'm saying, not saying you per se, but just anybody in general. Like, that's just Carolina, the Carolina way, I guess you could say, so
Yeah, I would
like,
add
it's an incredible story, man.
I would add too. There's a lot of luck involved too. Just like you always hear people say that. Just meeting someone at the right time, or being in the right room at the right time, or talking to the right person at
Hmm.
the right time. Just when I met Ben, and not being too aggressive, and like hey, what's going on with such and such? Just kind of laying low and trying to help and fitting in whenever I could, and then I guess years later it kind of paid off as evolving into what this role is now.
Yeah, yeah. And I got it. Listen, a lot of people really look up to you, man. A lot of people really look up to you. I'll say that. Uh, Trust me, I know that for sure. I know for a fact. There's a lot of people that you probably don't know, but they definitely look up to you. I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. I'll tell you about that at a later date. I'll leave that right there or whatever. But listen, Rel, I gotta ask you this. I gotta ask you this. And trust me, I get it. If you can't speak on things, all right. But I gotta ask you. I am. I've gotten to this point because I listened to some other podcasts, right? Not so much UNC podcasts, just other podcasts, sports podcasts in general, especially ones on college basketball. A lot of them have, to me, seems like they have pushed a narrative about UNC as a whole, the university itself. You know, missing out on players in the portal, can't get no recruitments, or whatever the case may be. Coach Hubert not doing a good job, I guess you could say, or whatever. But it's a narrative that these podcasters and everybody push. And they push it hard to where it's gotten to the point to where, to me, these narrative, I think it's like a smear campaign. That's my thoughts, that's my opinion, and I could be totally wrong. What would you, if you can, if not, I understand. But what would you say to those that say these types of things as far as the university or is concerned? Or even what I just said as far as it being a smear campaign?
Yeah, I mean personally, you can believe what you want. You're a grown man, so I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong. But for me, I wouldn't call
Right.
it a smear campaign per se. I think because
Okay.
UNC historically has been, it's one of the four best college basketball programs there's been, and it's been consistent over the course of, I guess now about 70 years, over the course of 3 or 4 coaches. So it's not a situation where it's the cult of personality of one coach, like say in Indiana, that made the program
Right.
successful. It's sustained now through Coach Smith and then through Coach Guthridge, surviving Coach Doherty, who brought in the players who helped Roy win his first title, surviving through Roy and now into Hubert. And there's a reason they won a national championship. I think it's 5 straight decades, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 4 straight decades. There's a reason for that.
Right.
And I think when you have all that history and you have that standing, when from the outside it appears that you're not living up to that standing, maybe in the recruiting realm or with consistent results, that's when you get some of the pushback from a national perspective, not recognizing that, all this has changed a lot. There's been
Right.
a dramatic shift in college basketball just over the last 4 years. Probably more progress, if you want to call it that, since 2021 than there was from 1970 to 2021. So you're
Right.
condensing decades of change into 4 years. Of course, there's going to be some slippage and there's going to be some changes that need to be made. And I think Hubert Davis is just kind of got caught up in that. The job he took when he took it back in April of 2021 is so much different from the job he has now in November of 2024. I mean, it can't be much different than it was, and that's just an adjustment. And I think he's doing a pretty decent job, all things considered, of making that
Right.
change. And like I said, just when you're at the top for so long, people are going to pick you apart. I mean, to be fair, Carolina fans do it to other programs, and I think some folks do it to some of the other blueprint programs. It just kind of comes with the territory when you're as
Right.
when you're on the Mount Rushmore, so to speak, of college basketball programs. It's just something that you're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, once again, that's just been my mindset, I guess, or perspective on things
So
because of the way.
explain it to me a little more detail. Why you think that?
Okay, so, and because I don't want to slander anybody's names or anything as far as other podcasters, right? But there are some that there's, to me, it seems like there's every time it's something in regards to North Carolina, there's a negative connotation that comes off, or a negative vibe that comes off certain people. And it's every time North Carolina is mentioned. Like, it doesn't matter whether it is about recruitment, transfer portal, what Hubert has done during his tenure as a head coach, what this team is missing out on, what they're not doing. They just don't stand a chance. I've even heard comments and things like that, and we ain't gonna touch on it or anything, but I've heard comments that UNC don't have no money. They're broke because that's the reason why they can't get players. Nobody wants to come to UNC anymore. They've lost their aura. So many different things. And it's not just coming from podcasters, but it's also coming from creators, social media creators, I guess you could say. They when they put out articles, it's just negative. Like they tread a line because they don't want to be completely out there as far as being negative, but it's negative. When you read these articles, it leans more towards the negative side. Like, oh, North Carolina is never going to get this player. It's all about this team that's going to get this player. North Carolina is not even in the runnings for this player, when that's not even the case. When I know that that's not even the case. Like, North Carolina might be right there. It's just the fact that you're not mentioning UNC. Why are you not mentioning UNC? What is the disdain that you have towards UNC? Why is it that you have to discredit them or talk about Hubert the way that you talk about him? I just don't understand it. And to me, it's not good, because if players that want to come to UNC hear these types of things, because now once things hits the net or the internet, there's no deleting, period. So if these players are hearing these things, then the first thing they're going to think is, oh, well, UNC don't have any money, and why would I want to go there? Or this, or the way that Hubert is doing things, or just whatever the case may be, depending on what it is that that person or that these people are putting out there. It's like an agenda. So, and I think that affects UNC at times. I think it does affect UNC at times, because to me, I don't understand certain things. Like UNC is a school that can go out and get any player that they want, but yet some players they've missed on. Not saying, and I'm sure it's for various reasons, for sure, but it's just giving fuel to those that have an agenda towards UNC in a negative light.
One thing I'd say is that those folks who do that, whatever their intentions are, they do. Engagement is kind of the currency of the day, right? Like everybody wants engagement, and they know how big of a fan base that UNC has. They know that if they just put hashtag UNC in something, or hashtag Tar Heels, it's going to get attention. So I'm not saying that it's always done just for that, but it certainly doesn't hurt if you're being measured by how many folks engage with your story or view your story. Just throw in something about Carolina, because it gets posted on message boards and other places where people gather to talk about Carolina basketball. It gets put on social media. It gets talked about on podcasts, and then they've kind of gotten what they wanted, whether they believe what they said or not. They've gotten kind of the attention, they've gotten the engagement, and they're on to the next thing. So I think part of it is just, we can get into a deeper discussion about journalism and what it is now and what it's not. But part of it is that kind of, folks who say things may not have done the reporting on it to know if it's true or not. They may not have the context. They may not have reached out to multiple sources to confirm. And so they could just be talking, and people take what someone says because they have a platform as gospel truth, or as, the way it is. And then that becomes kind of cyclical, because they take that as, this is true, and then they spread it. And then even though it's conjecture and it's not based on any fact, it becomes true. So I think that probably is happening a lot too.
Yeah, that could be. Just to make sure that I do throw this out there. The ones that I'm talking about are major. These like major platforms, like big names. Like they're not just little guys. Like if you want to call me a little excuse me, if you want to call me a little guy, that's fine, because I am still in the beginning stage, I guess you could say. But they're not little guys. These are very, very well-known people, and they have it could be even global, but they definitely have national platforms that are very broad and expand in a lot of different places. Like I said, I don't want to really throw out no names, because that's just not what I want to do or anything like that. But I just wish, it just seems like there's an agenda, and it seems like some have conformed together or joined together to put a little smut on the UNC name, I guess you could say. Like I figured that out when the rumor came out that UNC was broke. didn't have no money, which just insane to even put those type of words in the same sentence together. This is North Carolina. Like, why on earth would anyone think that UNC is broke and they don't have no money? Why? Because they missed out on players? That's crazy. So what if they missed out on players? Doesn't mean that they don't have no money. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And it's a narrative that they continue to push. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't speak to their motivations. I guess they're doing their thing, I guess.
Like you said, it's engagements, right? I mean, we're in that era for engagements or whatever. I guess that's what they choose to do. I just, it affects the players, and it could alter decisions when it comes to certain things such as transfer portal, recruitment, whatever you want to call it. And I just wish, because I don't hear it for any other teams. I really don't. But it just seems like it's just always UNC. So I don't know. I don't know or whatever. So, but I do want to ask you this, because I really want to know your thoughts on this. How do you feel about like the NIL and transfer portal? Like, everybody has their opinion on it, I guess you could say. Like, how do you feel about it? Like, do you think it's a good thing, like, or what?
I would, like most things in life, I think it's kind of a mixed bag. It's kind of in the gray. I like the idea of players being able to choose their circumstance and being able to get out of bad situations when they're in them. I think the issue is that the NCAA, as it always does, kind of punted on everything and punted on giving any kind of regulation just so they won't be sued. And so now you have a
Right.
situation where it's NBA free agency without the NBA free agency rules. So basically,
Hmm.
you can leave each year. If you want to, go to 4 schools in 4 years, you can do that with no issues. And then I think NIL, which this is called salary, let's call it financials or salary, whatever. NIL gets a bad rap. Like, name, image, and likeness isn't um, the same thing as like handing over cash each month to players. And that's pretty much what's happening
Right.
everywhere now. So I always, when I get the chance, I try to not use NIL and just say, let's just say salary, because that's what it is. Um, I think, again, that same thing with that. It's great that players can do that. They should be able to do that. But again, when you just open the floodgates without any regulations, of course it's going to go to the absolute, furthest point away from where you started. It's going to be the worst, incarnation of what you thought about, which is just handing players cash. Like, nobody, I don't know why, but people weren't like, oh, there'll be collectives, and the collectives will dole out money, and then once that happens, we'll start signing kids to multi-year contracts, and the money will go up and up and up. None of that was really done. It was just like, hey, it started off as like, hey, you can do a camp now with your name on it, or you can do a Gatorade commercial. And in 3 years, it's become this burgeoning multi-million dollar industry for players, which again is a good thing. But you just can't have these things without some form of regulation. I'm not saying it needs to be where every dime is counted, every penny is counted, and everybody knows exactly what the players are making or anything like that. But the way it is now, it's just, I don't think it's really sustainable. Um, so we'll
Right.
see. I just don't know how this continues year after year, because it's not like, hey, school X needs $9 million for this season. It's not like a one-time thing. It's like, okay, this season's over. School X needs $9 million again next year. Oh, it's the school Y
Right.
now has went up to 11, so school Z now needs to get 14 million. And it's just like, at what point does it stop? And I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. There's some regulations from the House settlement that could be coming into play, but no one is exactly sure how that's going to work. So a long-winded way of saying I think it's good and bad. It really is a mixed bag.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm I'm right there with you. Like, and it may be long and drawn out, but I'm gonna try my best to make this short, right? So, not a big fan of the NBA. I think, as a matter of fact, I think we spoke about that, right? So, the reason why, of course, I don't like the load management, the whole egos, you know, it's just a lot to the NBA, basically, that's just boring, I guess you say. I believe that college basketball is heading that way. Um, if the NCAA don't figure things out as far as regulations when it comes to transfer portal, NIL. I agree that players should get paid. I love that whole idea. I think that is brilliant. I think it's more so gotten down to the point to where the players are now more so in control than the coaches or the university. And I think that it needs to get back to where the coaches in the university are in more control than the players. Players sitting up asking for millions of dollars and they haven't even stepped a foot on college court yet or played a game is crazy to me. Got to figure something out in that regard. As far as like you said, you can't put a salary cap on each team because it's still going to end up unbalanced when it comes to some of these other teams.
And they will get sued if they try. I mean, the Supreme Court has been very clear about that. If you try to cap these wages, without some kind of collective bargaining, then, it's going to be illegal and won't stand. So that's where the House settlement comes in. So that is, if it's approved in April, that will go into effect in July. I think the issue is, and that would cap it. You could share revenue with your players if you choose to, up to a certain amount. And I'm not sure what the number that everybody's been saying is $22 million a year that the school itself could pay out to its athletes, and then there would be some kind of structure where a certain percentage went to football. Football would get the most, and then basketball, and then some of the other sports. Each school, I think, though, has a decision to make about how it wants to do it or if it wants to do it, because some schools aren't going to be able to afford that. And I mean, like I said, it's good for I guess you would call them revenue sports, quote unquote. But then you get to start thinking about the downfall effect of how much money these schools are going to have to create over the next 5 or 6 years. And it seems inevitable that, Olympic sports, or what we call Olympic sports, are going to suffer some. So, I mean, there's a lot that's going to happen with college sports in general. College basketball and football aren't going to go anywhere. But there's going to be a lot of change over the next 5 years.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What do you think about, because I had this conversation with a couple of other guys or whatever from another episode. They threw out a suggestion that maybe some of the NIL money go into like a trust fund for the player. But then every semester or something like that, that player has to take like a financial type of class to basically, because kid coming in 17, 18 years old, making $1.5 million, then how does he know how to budget his money? I mean, of course, unless he's just giving it to his family and for his family to take care of it. But how many kids really are going to do something like that? Like, you know what I'm saying? So what do you think about like a financial type class that the players should take, maybe every semester or something like that, and putting NIL money into a trust fund, like a certain amount of what you get from NIL into a trust fund?
Yeah, that sounds okay. I think it's a slippery slope with telling people, regardless of age, what they can and can't do with their money that they've earned. So I think that's okay. A lot of people who have jobs, they pay into a 401k, and they can pay up to a certain amount. So I think we have to do a certain amount. Some jobs, anyway. I'm okay if it's like, you can do up to a certain amount, or if some of it is optional. but making it mandatory, I don't know, man, because that starts to get a little paternalistic for me. Like, let's
Right.
take care of these young boys who don't know what they're doing, and that's I get the idea, but it's also not allowing them agency with their money and with their lives. So I think that's tough. But the money course I think would be cool. Like if you're going to be in school and you've got $1 million in the bank, then yeah, you should know how to invest it and know kind of what you're doing. So if you're going to be in school for nine
Yeah.
months, if you're a one and done, you're making good money, yeah, you should take a financial literacy class designed specifically for, you and 7 or 8 people from the football team and maybe a couple of people from soccer or something who have those kind of big time earnings. So I think that's cool.
Yeah.
But as far as like mandatory putting somebody's money away, I'm not very much pro like take somebody's money. Like it's y'all's money,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know about that one. That I would have to think about that one some more.
I got you. I got you. I got you. I got you. So I had this discussion right with Reyshawn Terry moving to the team right now to this team for this season. Actually, I did have one more question, but I don't want to keep delving into it like that. I'll ask it. I think it's a simple question. I think it's a legit question. Do you think that these recruitments, I'm not even going to pinpoint and just say UNC, but do you think that these recruitments use the leverage from big schools as leverage or whatever to actually try to get more money from other schools because of the players like being in pretty much in control, I guess you could say, more so than the university and the coaches are.
Yeah, it used to be where if a blue blood would offer, then that would kind of be the sign to the other schools, like, oh, you're not getting this kid because what
Right.
can a school that's not a blue blood offer that a blue blood legally that a blue blood doesn't have, and so that was always the case. And
Right.
schools would be nervous when Carolina, Duke, Kentucky. I'm being loose with the phrase blue blood, but when Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, Villanova, UCLA, Indiana, those type of schools, when they would come in late, they would say, well, we can't really compete with that. So what do we do? I think now, post salary and financial considerations, it is a leverage play for a lot of guys where they come in and they might have an offer. They might have an offer from North Dakota State. Obviously, North Dakota State isn't in the
Right.
salary game, but let's just pick them out as a school. Say they have an offer from them, and
Right.
then they put Carolina on their list, and Carolina and Duke are on their list, and they say, hey, I know for a fact that some kids have just made up numbers like, hey, school X is going to give me however much money. And then they go back to North Dakota State and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
man, you were my first offer. I love you so much, but can you meet this? And then if they say yes,
Right.
then and that's the school they were thinking about going to all along, they do it. But yeah, I definitely think that's happening, and that's a large part of that is agents were never um, involved on the surface of this stuff, and now that they can be, their job is to get the most money for their client, and it doesn't really mesh with how recruiting has gone in the past, really, all of history. The past 80 years of how you recruit and how you get guys. Now it's more of a negotiation, unless
Yeah.
the money is similar, and if the money is similar, then some other things come into consideration like tradition and relationships and all that stuff. But whereas those used to be the things that um, kids decided on, now it's kind of more of a tiebreaker if the money is similar.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of been the big change.
Yeah. I will say this. I do think if because of the fact that the coaches and the university don't have like that control like that over the players anymore, you're going to see a lot more of the veteran coaches retiring, I think. Um, you know, the Bill Selfs, the Tom Izzos, uh, Can't really say that for Calipari because of the pipeline that he has with the NBA. So I really can't say that with him too much. Patino's, uh, but it's just because if you notice now in college basketball, it's starting to be, it's a wave of younger coaches. Like Rick Barnes is probably one of the ones up there. Larinaga, Leonard Hamilton, uh, Bill Self, Izzo. That was Patino. Those are like I just look at that because of the Tony Bennett situation. I just think that that was really just a big shocker. Tony Bennett being a great coach, and of course wish him the best. But to be so young and to now fully just retire, but that goes back again to coaches not being in control and the universities not being in control of these players. So I, I just you're gonna see a wave of losing more veteran coaches, and
Yeah,
I mean the
and
game is just changing, man.
yeah, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of guys who stay at one school or stay in coaching for 35, 40 years like it used to be. It was like, hey, if
Right?
you found your guy and he was 38, then you were going to have him for 30 years. He was going to be, he's going to have the court named after him and all that stuff. And I just, in this environment, unless something changes, coaches are going to burn out too quickly to stay around that long. I think you cut it in half.
Yeah,
So if you found the coach you thought was going to be the guy back in the day and he was going to stay for 30 years, I think 15 is probably as much as you're going to get because it
yeah,
doesn't stop. It's stressful. You got to re-recruit your whole team every year in addition to recruiting another team every year. You got to deal with agents that you didn't have to deal with. You got to deal with collectives that you didn't have to deal with. You have to fundraise for your salary program. You have to work with a general manager, and you have to work with there's just so much more complexity and so much more asked of the head coaches than there was that it's just impossible to do that job. Like these guys before they were basketball coaches, and now they've gotten to the point where they kind of have to be CEOs unless they have a staff full of people doing that stuff. And most schools can't afford to have
yeah,
a staff of 10 or 11. Most schools can afford to have the head coach, 3 bench coaches, a director of player personnel, and maybe one more person. So most schools are
yeah,
around 5 or 6 tops. Um, and yeah, it's just coaches are going to burn out. It's going to be very hard to be in this game for 15 or 20 years with the way it is now, unless something changes.
yeah. Now, do you think every school should have a GM?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's just there's too much to do. I mean, you think about how the NFL
Yeah,
works. You kind of have to build it almost like a professional team. And professional teams have a general manager, they have an assistant general manager, they have coaches who coach, they
hmm,
have general managers who manage, they have directors of scouting who scout. They have like college scouting, which I guess for a college basketball program would be high school scouting, and then they have
yeah,
directors of pro player personnel, which is basically guys who look at all the other teams, watch their players, and decide if they might want them at some point. So for college basketball, you need like a director of like college basketball personnel whose job is to look at all the other teams, players you've recruited in the past, and have a list so that says like if these guys hit the portal, when the portal opens, this is who we're going to contact. So you kind of have to be doing all that while coaching games in season, while doing high school recruiting, while raising money. So it's like there's just a whole bunch
yeah,
more that you have to do, and if you're not able to do it, I don't know how you can be successful. So I think a GM and other roles are a necessity for schools, especially a school like Carolina.
yeah. I'm right there with you. I agree with you. I agree with you. So, all right. So, Rail, let's go ahead and move into it. As far as this upcoming team, how did you how did you feel about the game Monday? Like, what is your take on the team for Monday? Like pros, cons.
Um, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Like is one game in November. Like I try never to take one game in November, whether it's at Kansas. If they win Friday night at Kansas, I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is an amazing team. It's gonna be like, there's a game in November. Let's see what
Right.
happens. I'm not saying anyone who is forming firm conclusions from Monday night's game is wrong. I'm just saying that's not how I operate. So for me, and
Hmm.
I talked about this like on the Inside Carolina podcast. The goal was to like don't get anybody hurt, win the game, and then see how they adjust to playing a team that's not going to let them do what they want to do. Now, I thought it would be that Elon would just slow the game down and limit possessions, but they played zone. So that's something that Carolina
Right.
will need to see. So that it's a positive that they were able to see it. It's not a positive with kind of the way they struggled with it for a few minutes there in the first half, and then another few minutes there in the second half. But I think it's a learning experience, and they won the game. So outside of that, I personally I just try not to take too much from November or December basketball. Again, if people want to do that, I'm not saying you're wrong to, but that's just not
Right.
how I operate. I think if you're looking from the individual game itself, um, obviously Seth has been the story of the offseason and has really changed the
Hmm.
dynamics of like how the team is going to operate because I think everyone went into the offseason assuming that Ian Jackson would be starting. And now that he's not, that is another kind of athletic, versatile player that you can bring off the bench and not lose a ton from a scoring perspective. So I think that was important.
Right.
Just seeing how Seth is gotten better over the last 5.5 months. And then obviously Cadeau was what everyone what he showed glimpses of last year and what everyone thought he was going to be, he was in the first game. Just really tremendous. And again, you don't want to take too much from one game, but you think I think he hit 30% of the threes he hit last season in one game so far this year.
Right.
So you already see the areas that he's improved upon that he worked on in the offseason. So I mean, the backcourt is obviously a pro. RJ Davis is RJ Davis. Still wanting to be a little more efficient, but when you have three guards like that, it can on the offensive side it makes things easier for everybody else. I think on the defensive side,
Yeah.
that's going to be a work in progress, and I think everyone kind of realized that when I guess you're 1, 2, 3 or 6'2", 6'1", 6 foot, being generous. So that's going to be something
Yeah.
that has to continue to develop. But Hubert Davis has shown in his first 3 years that he can put together a pretty solid defensive team. If you look at their KenPom rankings and the efficiency stuff, they're usually a pretty solid defensive team. There's always a game or two though where they look where they look pretty bad. I think about that Wake Forest game back in his first season was they were really bad.
Yeah.
There were a couple of games in that NIT season where it looked like they just couldn't stop anybody. Last year, the UConn obviously UConn won the national championship, but the UConn game they couldn't grab a
Right.
rebound. Tennessee they couldn't stop them in the second half, but overall, he has pretty good defensive units. So I think you have to bank on him figuring out how to get the team to play solid defense moving forward. So those are some of the
Yeah.
pros. I think the cons, we'll just kind of see. Um, I've said for some time that my biggest worry wasn't the five because I think you can get in the aggregate between those three guys, between Lubin, between Jalen Washington, James Brown when he comes around, and Jalen Withers sometimes playing down at the five, you can get enough to be solid there. I think the issue is going to be the four and how that position evolves over the course of the season. Kate Tyson is having some issues. I think transitioning to this level of play that doesn't mean he's going to be terrible or anything. It's just that he's his first game wasn't the best. His exhibition wasn't the best. Um, so he's still got to learn and develop at this level. And then with Jalen Withers, he plays good for a while, and then he kind of the Dr.
Mhm.
Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. He kind of goes into a different person and is not the same person he was in the first half. So you're just not sure what you're going to
Right.
get night in and night out from the four spot. And I think that's where I see kind of a issue. And it ultimately be Drake Powell there? Will Withers get improve and be more steady? Will Cade Tyson improve and be able to play there? I think that's for me really a pretty huge question mark for the team moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I I had this discussion with Reyshawn Terry. He called me and he asked me about the game. Now, granted, I didn't get a chance to see the game, so I did record it. But I've heard so much, of course, about it. Like I said, listening to a lot of the podcasters and things like that. But Reyshawn's thing was he feels that the players are being limited to their potential, I guess you could say. Meaning Huber doesn't release the dog in them that they have. Just release them. Like you can see the difference between UNC versus like Duke. Like Duke has always been one of those teams that, yes, they have a system, but they release their players, like go out and just be dogs. Whereas on the UNC side, doesn't really happen like that. And he feels that the a lot of the players are being limited to their full potential as far as going out there to be dogs. That's not my take from it. I don't really agree to that. Now, I do agree that, yes, Duke does release dogs into their they release them. I will give Duke that. They come out and you get intimidated by Duke very quick in a game. My thing was, like I told him, like you said, number one, it's the first game. They have to find some adjustments, like, and things like that. They have to face some adversity. There's a lot of things that this team has to go through, but mainly number two, this team doesn't really have that Harrison Ingram, Cormac Ryan attitude, I guess you could say. Harrison and Cormac brought that out of Armando last year. Before then, Armando wasn't really vocal, I guess you could say like that, until last year when he got with Harrison and got with Cormac. This team, I think right now they're trying to figure things out, but at the same time, nobody wants to step on anyone's toes either. So it's like, who's going to be that one that brings out that edge, that dog? And is Huber just going to release them and just say, hey, you got the green light. Just go out there and do your thing. Like, it's the second part, that's tough. That's tough to say because Huber doesn't seem like that type of guy. But he does seem like, hey, I'm going to let you – I got to take you off the leash a little bit. Go out there, yeah, and do your thing. But at the same time, don't get too crazy. We still have a system to run. Like, if that makes sense. But
I probably would have to disagree with Reyshawn on that one. Obviously, he's played basketball at a much higher level than I have. Like, so,
right.
His opinion stands. But like, I don't know that they're not. Let me rephrase. I think one of the things, like, I hear it all the time on the recruiting trail about Hubert Davis is like he lets me be me. So I that's why one of the reasons I disagree with it. Like Ian Jackson, Seb Trimble, Elliot Cadeau, R.J. Davis, Harrison Ingram, is something we heard over and over and over again. Is that he allows me to kind of play my game within, like you said, the construct of what UNC is trying to do. So I do feel like they're kind of being given the freedom to explore. I mean, Elliot Cadeau, I think it was the first two games he didn't start last year, and then he's pretty much the starter for the whole season, playing 34, 33 minutes per game. So, like, I don't know that I agree with that about the full potential thing. As far as, like, the leadership thing, I just don't think we know yet. I mean, even Harrison Ingram, that developed over the course of the season. And I'd say, too, with the Armando point, I think part of it is he knew it was his final season. Like, he knew this was it. And that stuff just brings a clarity to a lot of folks that they just didn't have before, realizing that, after these 35 or 33 or 40 games, I'm never going to put on this jersey again and play in this building. So that changes things for a lot of folks. So I think that was part of Armando's transformation. And the year before, they were just not a good team. And who wants to go through that again? So you're going to do whatever it takes to not go through that. So I think Trimble has some of that where he will do what's necessary and talk to people. I think Cadeau has done that before. I think R.J. Davis has grown at it. And I think a couple of the younger, well, not younger guys, but guys who haven't played as much, saw Jalen Washington as emotional as you've probably seen him, Monday night, as emotional as you've seen him since he's been at Carolina. This is his third year. So leaders will rise up. I mean, that typically happens over the course of the season. Someone kind of naturally slips into the role. And that's what I'm saying. It's one game. So let's see where they're at after 10 or 15 games and then kind of reassess.
Yeah. And I do agree with you as far as Cade is concerned. And that was the same thing that I was trying to tell him. Like, listen, he has to make he has to make that jump and that transition from going from Belmont to North Carolina, two totally different teams. Number one, when he was at Belmont, plays were made and ran strictly for him. Whereas at UNC, that's not the case. So he has to adjust to whatever his role is going to be. I do think once he really builds up that confidence, it's going to make things so much easier because now he can run the baseline. He can be in either corner. You know, now you got Ian and Seth and Elliott and RJ. Now, as they drive to the basket, now they can dish it out to him, which is going to open that floor up a lot more and open that lane up a lot more for them to be able to do so. Because now it's like, who do you guard? Who are you really paying attention to? Because if you don't pay attention to Cade over here, he wasn't 40-something% from the three-point line for nothing. He's going to burn you out here. His agility, I think he needs to work on that a little bit more, just a little bit. And I think in due time he will. I think he will come around or whatever. So, but I think I'll ask you this. I'll ask you, do you have an X Factor player for this season?
I mean, I was asked last week. I said Elliott Cadeau, and now people are gonna, because of what happened Monday night, people are gonna think I'm going because of what happened. But he's the one player I think who what he does and when he's doing it well makes everybody else better. It's not that other guys can't. It's not that Seth Trimble or R.J. Davis can't make other players better. But what Elliott Cadeau does is, you talked about maximizing potential. Offensively, the way he plays helps other guys maximize like their best selves. Like the beginning of the second half, Jalen Washington really didn't do much at all offensively in the first half. In the second half, just that pick and roll with Elliott Cadeau, I think he had 6 straight points to start the second half. So just that kind of thing. And he was put in those positions because, one, Hubert Davis made the play call, and 2, because of Cadeau's vision. And so you talk about someone like Cade Tyson, when you have a point guard like Cadeau who's going to find you before he finds himself, he brings out the best in Cade Tyson because offensively he's going to find him. He's going to figure out where he likes it, how he likes the ball, how he likes it spun, exactly, how he likes to catch it. And that's going to put him in a position to succeed, which makes the team better offensively. So to me, that's why he's the X factor. It's just because if Cadeau's operating at a 10, he kind of takes everybody up from like 1 to 2 points from where they were. So if you're a 6, when Cadeau's playing at a 10, he brings you up to an 8. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think he's the X factor, because he just makes everybody else, at least offensively, that much better.
So let me ask you this: as far as like, I just want to know what you think about who my X factor is. Right? My X factor has been Jay Withers from day one. The reason why I say that is because we all know when he was at Louisville, Jay Withers was, if I'm not mistaken, playing the two guard position. There were plays set for him. He was shooting 40-something% from the three. Like, he was one of them guys. He gets to North Carolina, percentage has dropped, things like that or whatever, because now you're in a totally different system, whatever the case may be. He's 6'9", the most athletic, certainly the most athletic big on the team. But to me, the most athletic on the team, besides maybe Seth and Drake, maybe, but I still think he's the most athletic, right? Instead of him pushing him on the offensive side of things, why not move him more towards being a stronger defender? Because he can guard 1 through 5 if need be. But make him the Jackie Manuel, the Leaky Black, that type of play, the Brian Reese, that type of player, to where now when teams decide that they want to drive to the basket, things like that, then he should be one of those ones that you worry about, because he can fly out of the gym and he can come out of nowhere, just swat it into the stands or whatever, and that just be it. Just be a strong defender, more so than on the offensive side of things. Would you agree to that? Or you think it's a little bit, am I overreacting, I guess, a little bit or something? Like, what do you think?
No, I think those are his strengths. We obviously don't know exactly what Hubert Davis tells him in practice and everything, but
Right.
he started at the 4, on Monday night. So I think that tells you how they feel about him. I mean, it could tell you how they feel about other people as well. So if you want to glean something from that, you can. But yeah, I think his role is energy, defensive, stalwart, rebounding, dunk guy. Like that's what he's in the game to do. And I think what happens is sometimes the more he plays, the more some of that Louisville comes out, where he wants to put the ball on the floor, start dribbling, start doing things that maybe are just out of character for his role with this particular team. Not saying he can't do them as a player, but for this particular team, what UNC needs is pretty much what you said is the rebounding, blocking shots, finishing in transition, being a guy doing the dirty work, getting steals, all those things. That's his role. And I'm sure, again, we don't know exactly what Hubert Davis has communicated to him, but you can kind of, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that's how he helps the team, and that's how he stays on the court the most. The issue with Withers is just, like I said, it seems like the more he's on the court, things start to go different ways. They start to go south a little bit the longer he's on the court. So it's almost like he needs to be in for kind of short bursts to kind of do his thing, and then take a break. So, but that presents a challenge because UNC doesn't have a ton of players who they can play right now in the 4. So I think that's
Right.
the main issue, I think. But yeah, defense, rebounding, energy, that's what he's there for.
Yeah. I think Lubin is gonna I think Lubin is gonna end up being like your new Harrison Ingram. I do. We didn't know Harrison was Harrison until what? Start of the conference play last season. Like, it may have started a little bit before then, but we didn't really know that Harrison was going to end up being like the leading rebounder, like or one of the leading, well, on the team for sure. But we didn't know that he was gonna be that type of player. I do think that that's going to be the same thing for Lubin this year. They pretty much almost the same size, built a little different, but same height, same size. Lubin might even be a little bit bigger, but not to mention you still got Ty Claude, number one offensive rebounder in the ACC last year, top 10 in the country last year. So you still got him that probably should get a little bit, he's got to get some burn. He has to get some burn. Like he can't just come and just sit the bench like that. And then James Brown, use him just as that bigger body that comes in. If you want to throw away some fouls, I guess you could say, because of the fact he is a development type of player. And then you got Withers. So, the Carolina is lacking. Go ahead.
I don't know. Like for me, I'm not counting anybody out for playing time at this point. Just because I think they need somebody to come in who can be a presence in the paint and who can rebound, and whoever can do it, they don't care who it is. Whether it's James Brown or Jalen Withers or Jalen Washington or Van Allen Lubin, they don't care. They just need somebody to come in and do it, and it could be a situation where it changes depending on matchup. So I just think all those guys have a tremendous opportunity in front of. We haven't talked about Ty Clodd either. I know that he didn't play a ton at Georgia Tech last year. He started some games, but those 5 guys, whoever can come in and do what they need to do is going to get the playing time. So pretty cool opportunity for all of them in practice, and then as they move forward in games, for somebody to kind of seize that spot, because I think it's open for whoever can do those things that they're looking for. Because again, they have a ton of firepower from the 1 through 3 offensively. So what they need is just somebody to do the dirty work, and whoever does it is going to play a lot.
Yeah. I'm excited, man. I can't. I think this is going to be a very, very fun season. I mean, this is a team that that is built to something we've really never seen at UNC like that. So it's going to be interesting. I'm intrigued to know and see how Hubert is going to use all of the flexibility that he has as far as his players, with the smaller lineups, bigger lineups, faster lineups, slower lineups, like whatever the case may be. So it's going to be completely and totally interesting to see how it all just transpires out on the court, basically. So I don't know, man. Like, man, I tell you. So how many games do you think UNC wins in the regular season? Just the regular season.
I think
non-conference. I ain't gonna say regular season.
I gotta think of how many non-conference games they play. So 20 ACC games, and then was that 15 non-conference?
Is it 15 or is it 12?
I had to look at the schedule.
I think it's 12 because you got
12?
30, you got 20 because they got 32 games this year instead of 31, because it was normally 31. But because of that Hawaii situation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
not including Maui though.
Oh, okay, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Non-conference, if they've got 12, and then if they play 3 in Maui, that would be 15, right? Let's just say
correct.
Let's say 11. 11. I'll take over of 11 and a half. Let's just say 12. 12 and 3 in the non-conference, something like that.
Wow.
11 and 4, 12 and 3.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Who's the losses though, Real? Who's the losses?
I think Friday is going to be tough. But go ahead and I think you can count that one against Kansas. I would assume one of the games in Maui. Maybe it's UConn. I'm not sure. And then I'll go different and say UCLA.
Ooh, that UCLA is gonna be a tough one. I do believe that. Don't sleep on Florida either. But you did say one of the ones in Maui, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah.
I think they'll be Dayton, but after that, I don't know.
Yeah, that second game is gonna be crazy. And I tell you, the road just got easier for UConn on that top part of the bracket. I mean, with things falling apart with Memphis. Like that's crazy. But yeah, Auburn is pretty good. Iowa State is good. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm just looking forward to it. So listen, Rel, I appreciate you, my guy, for really stopping through, man. Like I said, man, this is an honor. It's been a pleasure for sure. You know, as I tell everybody, you're always welcome back, bro. Like anytime, open invitation. You know, and yeah, it's gonna be a really good season or whatever. Hopefully we could get some more episodes in for sure. You know, if you're available and not too busy for me, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you're a busy guy. So, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll definitely see. But I definitely appreciate you stopping by. Tell the guys at Inside Carolina for sure that 94 feet of UNC said what up. And yeah, it's go Heels. But anything you would like to say out there to the fans?
No, man. Just again, appreciate you invite me on here, and appreciate everybody. I know you had some kind words about SC. Just appreciate everybody listening and reading.
Absolutely. So everybody, that is Sherrell. Yeah, real. So listen, man. Once again, man, appreciate you. Yeah. We'll talk. We'll talk soon, I guess, for sure, or whatever. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Listen, everybody, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Don't forget, follow me on my socials. Oh, and Rails descriptions and all of that. Socials will be in the bottom. Put in